Welcome back, coaches. This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain, here with Joe Daniel, as always.
What's up, Coach?
I'm recovering. It's a recovery day for me. I had an appendectomy yesterday, so Monday. You ever heard of smoldering appendicitis? Well, it's a thing, and it's where your appendix is just bad for years, apparently. So I went in about 2 months ago with some issues, and they were like, nothing's wrong with you. Yeah, I know, but I hurt. And they came back and said I had smoldering appendicitis. So got that bad boy removed, and now it is just water. And I'm trying to stay away from pain pills, so I've just been laid on the couch with ice and bad movies. I finished John Wick 4. I don't know what they were trying to do with that franchise. They should have stopped after 1.
Never seen any of it.
Oh, you gotta watch John, but just
it's probably never gonna happen.
Never gonna happen.
Probably never gonna happen. Movies. Now, I will say that if I watched it, I would probably really like it. But the idea of committing 2 hours to a movie is just so. I always like movies when I watch them, but the idea of sitting down for 2 hours and doing nothing else is just like I watch sports, I watch wrestling, I watch all that sort of stuff. None of that requires you to be committed to it for 2 hours. You know, I can do other things, but a movie, you really kind of got to commit to it. And so I beyond Star Wars, it's hard for me. I even, I read all of the Harry Potter books here in the last year and was really looking forward to watching the movies, and I've made it through like 1.5. And I understand my understanding is that those first few were more like not what it became. But and it's not because I didn't like them or whatever, but I love the books, and man, just finding time to sit down and spend 2 hours on that. And then I don't want to watch like bits and pieces of it when it comes on TNT or something. So.
Funny that we're going to have this we're talking spring practice and install schedules and all that good stuff tonight, but that's what I did today. So I finalized my spring install, and then the script, I've scripted play-by-play even for the first week. I haven't got the second week yet, but so I had to rewind the movie like 25 times because I'd be like, what happened the last 15 minutes? Where are we at?
Yeah.
So I do tend to multitask. I've gotten to that point in life where I just watch the same 20 movies I've always watched, and then I don't have to worry about that because I know what happens. So when I add a new one, you're right. It is hard to. There's a lot of movies I've not just sit down and watched because that exact same reason. I'm too busy. I either should be doing something or feel like I should have been doing something other than sitting on my rear watching TV. So
is that your level up? Did you just transition to leveling up?
I think my level up is. No, yes, I guess a little bit. I made my spring.
Getting the smoldering appendix out.
But that was a level up. I will be a better coach because I will be alive or whatever. It's gonna be great. Here's what I did for my level up this week, and this segment. It's gonna make me crazy because last week I started running again. I've always been easy. I can just go run. It's really easy for me, and it was kind of hard. And I was like, oh. But I got to get some exercise in before spring ball and before I had the stupid appendix thing coming out. So I started on Twitter a new community. It's like a new thing apparently, and it's called the football. No. Sorry, it's the Coaches Fitness Connection. So it's just a community, and it's like 30 people deep, just coaches sharing whatever their workouts, their runs, their diets, all the things that we struggle with men. Number one, to talk about with each other because we're too manly to talk about our fitness and say, hey man, I've put on a few pounds because that's so womanly to say. But yeah, and I want it to carry over to, this season and more coaches join and talk about whatever their issues are. Probably mental health at sometimes. Mental fitness is very important, sure. Right? So I'm sure that will come up. I didn't really start that just yet, but yeah, man, it's 20 or 30 coaches deep now, and as I get back to where I can do things, I'll be sharing my runs and my workouts, and I'm gonna start rucking. maybe going to do the 75 hard. Maybe we can try to get a group together to do that. But so my level up this week is to help other coaches, because we lost a friend that was on the coaching staff a couple of years ago. He was a very large man, like
Right.
I would say 400 plus pounds, very, very large man. And due to his weight, he had a hernia, didn't know what it was because he was so big. It was just another thing. And ended up, I think he actually pushed the hernia back in with his own hand, and he went septic, and he was gone within like 48 hours. So that's a very unfortunate thing, but it was also very, it didn't have to go that way, right? I mean, if someone had just been his accountability to help him get healthy, it could have literally bought him years. My wife and I started years saved, like a hashtag or a little thing a few years ago, and it was our thing just to go run and do weightlifting and stuff. So it's just one of those things, like you hate to lose a coach, a friend, whatever, a family member, due to fitness. And so I'm just trying to make it easy for coaches to get on there and talk about whatever they want to talk about fitness wise.
I think the mental, you mentioned the mental health, and that's a hard sell for football coaches, obviously. Like, we don't take excuses and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not in our nature, and it's not in my nature, a lot of the mental health crisis, like, I get it, but I'm not there to, I'm just not, I can't meet you there. I'll try. You say it. Okay. But I'm not there. And, I'm not going to doubt you, but it's funny because this is a very stressful, the first thing I think of as far as coaches and, opening up about your feelings and whatnot. I remember, and I've talked about it before. I remember a thread on Coach Huey years and years ago, 2007, 2008, maybe earlier than that. And it was the topic of the thread was something along the lines of, how do you know when it's time to get out? And the basic response, which at the time I was like, oh yeah, that's 100%. That's it. The basic response was, if you have to ask, it's time. Like, if you ever feel like you had a bad day, like if you ever don't want to go to practice, if you ever don't want to go to this grueling, especially back then as a lowly assistant, go to this grueling 3-hour practice. We used to do 3 practices a day in August, 5 a.m. The kids stayed. We go 5 a.m. We go. They get breakfast, and I think we go 8 to 10. Then we go, 3 to 5 or something. They get lunch. We go to like a special teams walkthrough, and then we'd have a night practice, we'd have a practice like 3 to 6, something incredible.
Jeez.
And if you ever think to yourself, there's kind of other things I'd like to be doing right now, then you need to quit. And it is a stressful job. And I think that somewhere along the way, someone being able to say, like, man, I'm kind of like burnt out. But like, I don't know about you guys. I will not walk into my staff meeting and say, like, I am burnt out right now. It is a struggle for me to sit down and watch film to get ready for this week. The best you can get is, man, I'm so tired, but I got the work done. I got it done, but I'm going to get it done, but I'm so tired, something like that. But to just go and be like, like legitimately, I don't want to do this right now. I know I have to. I know it's the right thing. It's my job. And that's part of it, is like, it's our job. And
Right.
we want to do the things that are right for the kids, for the other coaches. But there's not really anywhere in coaching where we can say those things. Now, JDFB, we've had some coaches who use the board for that. But we encourage coaches to get your staff on the board. So as soon as you do the thing that is probably most helpful for your football team, which is getting the entire staff on board, speaking the same language, using game film analysis, you lose the ability now you can't go on the board and say, I'm just burnt out. So I think that's an interesting from a coaching mental health standpoint. There's obviously lots of other things. We have coaches that go through, um, you know, we've been through we've seen coaches go through everything. We've heard about coaches go through everything from, you know, having a baby in the season, which is great, but holy crap, that's what I did. I don't know what about you, but I did that. Child born July 8th, season start August, and oh my god. Luckily, my wife was home for all but the last 2 weeks of the season, but like things like that. But then also death in the family. My grandmother died when I was coaching in junior college, and I don't know that I told a soul. I just went. It was, just went to practice.
Right.
Like it didn't matter. So it's very interesting the coaching and we're expected to just put our head down and go. I think it's getting better, but
Yeah, what really has helped me with that, and I'm completely okay talking about my feelings. Look, if I am burnout, number one, I just have a relationship like that with the head coach, especially, um, because if you can't say that, you've got to ask what that relationship is really like. But just in the military, I had to go through a lot of. Obviously, I mean, the number that's always touted is 22 suicides a day by veterans, and so like I'm in that bubble. I'm in that group that highly commit suicide. And so we have kind of, over the years tried to remove that stigma from talking about the things that are making us not feel right. It's completely okay. And so I've just kind of took that into my staff rooms with me wherever I'm at. Stillwell was a great place because we were in a place the kids needed us to have that open door with them. They needed to come in and talk about it. I mean, we had that's a place where there's a lot of negativity around there. And so if they couldn't come in and talk about it, like you're doing them a disservice, which means we as coaches had to be able to talk about it. But that's, yeah. So if that's what it turns into, that'd be great for the mental health side. I want coaches to be able to come on there and vent. It is Twitter, so their name's tied to it. You can't hide behind a forum name or something, but it is going to be an open space. Just whatever they need to talk about.
When I was at Prince George, being on the county that Fort Lee is in, or Fort, I don't know what it's called now, was Fort Lee.
Greg Adams? Is it Greg Adams?
I think so. Yeah, and Greg Adams, not Greg Adams. Right. There was a lot of, we did a lot of that, and our head coach there was really good at that because our kids had parents constantly being deployed, parents coming back and not, struggling with that. It's constant life changes for those kids, constant being moved around. Dad's gone, mom's back, which is like, that's what a lot of people like. You see the like heartwarming, oh, dad's back, and we meet him at the airport and everybody hugs. It's like, it's also extremely life changing. Like the rules of life change when dad gets back or when mom gets back, for better or worse. So very interesting stuff. So yeah, I will say one of the things for me with the level up is that I don't want it to be confined to football things, because I think that would go off brand for me, because I think it's really important to do things. I think we become a better football coach when we do things with our family. When we do things. So here's my level up, and it's probably as far off as it can get, but I feel so much better now. I've been in this house for 4 years, and I've hated the yard for 4 years. And we got everything just completely, we just were like, screw it. Let's get it all done. Get everything we want done. We've been kind of getting it better. And just last week, I cut the yard for the first time this year since all of the work's been done. I cut the yard. I, mowed the yard. I mulched some of the beds in the back. And I now, when I drive home, will sometimes take an extra lap to just look at my yard. Or I will
You're such an old man now.
Stand out. I am. I get it now. I will stand out on the back porch in the mornings and just look at my yard. Now, part of that, sometimes I'm looking at it going, we still need to do this. We still need to do that. But overall, I'm like, we finally don't have the ugliest lawn on the block. We got nice, thick grass. I am finally happy with my home. And I'm that is such a relief to me. That is one of those. It was legitimately, Daniel. This was one of my goals for 2024.
Nice.
Which, even though there's a couple little things left to do, I feel like I can already basically check that one off in April. It's amazing.
Yeah,
momentum.
We've been in our house for 4 years, and when we got so we probably got my yard is probably like an acre altogether. Like it's pretty good. We have 3 acres of land here, and we run goats out on a good section. But
Sure, the goat section.
right, this is the chicken section on this side,
Sure.
so it's fine. Homesteading. My wife was like, "We're not spending money on chemicals. We're not going to spend the money to. It's a lot, right?" And I'm like, "No, I agree, but I sure would like to have nice grass." 3 years in, and she's like, "It is a pasture out there. Do something with that yard." So, so this year is the try to kill everything off, and of course I didn't get to it in February. I'd like to round up before everything comes up, and then just your Bermuda will grow. But so I'm like having to piece it together now. But I'm kind of with you there in that attacking the yard this year, making it mine.
It is. It makes a huge difference. So I don't want to talk about my yard too long, but I'm pretty excited about it. So there's my level up.
There we go. Before we move on, I have to praise my child real quick. Beckett is 5, almost 6. 2 years ago, we put him in soccer. He was too embarrassed to play on the field in front of people. He wouldn't do it. He cried. He had his first game on Saturday, and he dropped a 6-piece on them. He had 6 goals. His team tied legitimately 6-6. Now, some of the kids stood there and watched the ball like
Sure.
they were statues, but he did not. He went wild. And he hates sports. He's not about sports. He was pissed the day before because he found out there was a soccer game and not just practice. And then he lit them up, and I was so freaking proud of that kid. So just want to put that out on the airwaves. Even if your kid doesn't like soccer or whatever sports at 3 or 4 or 5, give it time.
Yeah.
And now he's hooked.
Anthony Rendon still doesn't like baseball.
There you go.
To this day. Whatever. They don't have to like it. Just go do it.
Exactly.
If he's good at it,
Oh, man. All right, man. So that does it for the level up. Let's pay the bills, and we'll get started talking about spring practice.
Yeah, check out 40 Coach Simple Rules, which is going to be at joedanielfootball.com/rules. It is 40 tips, tricks, tactics, and strategies that can help you win a football game this season. I fully believe that if you commit to them, you'll find one in there that's going to win a football game for you. And you can pick that up at joedanielfootball.com/rules. It's a free PDF download. All you do is enter your email address, and it'll be sent straight out to you.
Awesome. Real quick, because I'll forget, we try to use it in the middle, but I want to talk about athletic speed and movement for just a moment. Athletic speed and movement is Joe and I have been working with Del Basquette. I can't remember what great Guru. He hated Guru. Godfather was his original name. He's the speed dude. Okay, he's the guy. 47 years of speed training. Started with the Seattle Seahawks in the NFL as the very first speed coach in the NFL. And the guy's just been whipping tail everywhere he goes since then. I mean, he's got 400,000 athletes that he has trained in those years. So the man has he calls them lab rats because he has just taken his program and tested it and tested it and tested it. We kind of talked about culture last week being like a science experiment, right? You're just constantly. He did that. He's been doing it for 400,000 athletes. He's got 5 or 6 Hall of Fame NFL players that have trained with him. 25 plus all-pro NFL players, including Bobby Joe Edmonds, who's a Arkansas Razorback fame, and then went on to have back-to-back all-pro years his first 2 years in the NFL. So the guy knows what he's talking about. The program is solid. I know Joe's been reinstalling it again this year. As soon as we can finally get to our kids, we will be installing it at Salina. Program is wonderful. AthleticSpeedMovement.com. You can jump over there and sign up today. It's a 12-week program, so you're not out of time yet. This comes out basically the 1st of May, and you still have May, June, July, and then bam, you're ready to start in August. Your kids will be faster. Every position on the field can benefit. It's no longer send your kids to track. You can do something bad on the football field. AthleticSpeedMovement.com.
Do you know what? This is just like the depth of Dale's knowledge. This is not promotion now. I just have to share this. So we're talking, and Dale's talking about this program and what nobody understands and what nobody knows, and the lab rat idea, right? All the time and the work that he spent with figuring this stuff out. And he says one of the things that nobody understands is, so some of the drills are 20 yards, some of them are 25, some of them, then we have zones, some of them have zones, so they're 10, 10, 15, and or 7, and the first 7 is this, and then you transition to this, and he said that is 45 years of him. Now, I assume somewhere in the first 20, he probably started to get this nailed down. He said all of those distances are very specific and for a reason. You can't cut the distance down and get the same effect, because in every single one of those distances, that is where the athletes on average start to break down the mechanics, to where if they went further, the mechanics would break down. So that is literally the farthest that we can go in a normal setting to get the most possible repetitions without breaking down the mechanics of it. So like everything is just like so thought out, just so, you look at it and you're like, all right, set a cone at 20 yards. Okay. Like that's way more than that. So yeah, I was just thinking about all this, the things that he's doing, the way he's doing it. It's like, okay.
He has it dialed in. It's really neat to see, and AthleticSpeedMovement.com. Jump over, because Dell's, it's his videos. It's stuff he's put together. It's him talking, him teaching you the things. It's a great program. Highly recommend anybody that's, especially if you're struggling with speed, if that's not your forte, if you don't already have a fast team, man, you can add a lot in a very short amount of time. So we'll jump on into question 1 here. So we're talking spring install, spring practice, however you want to name yours. I know different states get different amount of times. In Oklahoma, we get 10 days of practice. I think you can spread it out over up to 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know the rules exactly, because I've not had to be a head coach yet. So I don't need to know them yet. I just do what I'm told. Some states get none. Some I've heard get 5 days. It just kind of depends on where you are, if you get a spring at all. So we understand this may not be the episode for everyone, but maybe you're just doing it in your summer for 7-on-7, or if you're not in the gray, if you're not living in the gray area between the black and white, are you really doing your due diligence? I know some coaches will have practice, that's air quotes if you can't see them, and you're throwing a tennis ball instead of a football, right? Because
we used to have to do that.
Yeah, you get everything that you can for practice. There's no helmets, no pads, no footballs, but you're still putting in your scheme. I can still block down, kick out, and wrap. Like it's all there, right? I just don't have a football. So whatever your rules dictate, you can do. Hopefully you're taking some of what we talked about tonight and installing it or using it to enhance your spring practice period. So Joe, question number 1 here is, what are the goals of your spring practice?
Well, first of all, ours, just real quick, our rules, and we went through the VHSL has been all over the place with this. At one point, I don't remember what the rule was when I first started, but we went through the period where we had to use a tennis ball. Then it was like, well, everybody's doing 7-on-7. We have to be able to, if we're going to have 7-on-7 tournaments, we're going to need to be able to. In fact, I think at one point you were only allowed to practice 7-on-7 at a 7-on-7 event.
Right.
So things just start getting called 7-on-7 events, and we'd have like a 30-minute practice and then go, kind of jamboree style with some local teams and whatever. We did that for a long time, but we did the tennis ball thing. At one point, there was a rule that you could do anything football related. You could have a football out, but you could only have 10 players on the field. Like, I mean, there was some dancing. Now it's pretty much, no pads, but we're able to do whatever all year long. which, and I don't know what everybody else's organizations are like. Ours is non-existent. Non-existent. There's no, if you break the rules, nobody can report you.
Right.
The only person who can report you is the head coach, or I think the only person who can actually report you is the athletic director of the school that's performing the violation. So if your athletic director's
It's
cool,
self-reporting only.
it's literally self-reporting only. So that may have changed, but like you said, I'm not a head coach anymore, so I don't have to know if it changes. But nothing has changed in years for that. So we are able to do whatever we want with no pads on, which is perfectly fine with me. I grew up in Georgia where it has we had 2 weeks, and I believe this is still the same from the last, unless it's changed recently, as far back as 2019, going to Glacier clinics in Atlanta and being around coaches in Atlanta and them talking about how they're, those coaches talking about their setups. It was basically you could do it any time from January to, end of May or whatever. And some coaches did it in January. Some coaches did it, different times. But we were full pads. I always thought that was, looking back on it, I think it's absolutely amazing that we played Oklahoma on day one.
Of course.
This is 1997. That was day one. Let's go. That was basically every day.
Get the broken arms and torn ACLs out of the way fast.
Get them. Yeah. Well, at least you had time to heal from some of that stuff. Don't do that stuff. There's no reason. Like something I can get, you can get mad at me for saying don't do this or don't do that. Listen, I don't really mean it. You can do whatever you want, but that's dumb. Doing the Oklahoma thing, doing any drill with full contact where the numbers are not in the ball carrier's favor is a bad drill. So anything where it's live, I'm talking live contact, not fitting up a hawk tackle or something. Where anything with live contact so here's what not to do in spring. Anything with live contact where the ball carrier has no blocker, so it's just a ball carrier and a tackler, and I don't care what. Open field's a little bit different. I like open field. We've done some whiz the hips open field. I think open field is a little bit more okay. But anything short distance where it's just like he's going to get killed, that's dumb. The way that we did, the one where you roll off your backs and get up and hit each other, which I've heard that called Oklahoma. I've heard everything in the world called Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So Oklahoma is just a word that people use for dumb drill now. That's your state's legacy in football. And there was the one. So we used to do the one. What we did for the longest time, and I still see coaches doing it, is we did 2 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen, a linebacker, and a running back. Well, the numbers are not in the running back's favor. If if all else goes stalemate, it's a free hitter on the running back. That's not a good drill. It's not a good drill. It doesn't prove anything. The guy, it just doesn't work. So anyway, moving on. Don't do that. Goals of spring. When I work with coaches, obviously I don't have spring ball, but I help a lot of coaches set up their 2 weeks of spring ball, how to use those days, how to set up their install. What I stress to those coaches in that 10-day window that you guys have, to me, that is for the coaches more than the players. Because what do we know about kids? They will
dump it.
Forget that stuff. It will, if you could keep working it, like take athletic speed and movement. If we do that program and then we continue to work it, it really gets embedded in them. So we incorporated into movement drills and different things that we can do. Dale has different cycles that can be added on afterwards. But if you did, let's say you did, 3 weeks of it and then or 2 weeks of it and then or even let's say you had Dale come to visit. So one of my coaching friends got a head job and Dale is going to be here next Friday. So if Dale, not here, it's actually Williamsburg, but close by. if Dale came in for those 2 days, it would be very helpful to your kids. They would look great. The work would not be done. If you did nothing else, it would disappear. Now, if you go through a 12-week cycle, it's pretty strong. But if you continue to let it break, it will break. I think you should be focused on, as much as possible, gelling as a staff, understanding how, and obviously teams that have been doing this together for 20 years, things are a little different. In that case, I would be doing some experimentation and things. That's the time where I would be like, hey, if you've always been a wing T and you wanted to experiment with some more spread stuff, like, do that in the spring. Get the kinks worked out. Get the pace of practice. And this is as much for the coaches as the players. The pace of practice. What is a practice going to look like? How do we move from place to place? I want to make sure that as we do that, now I've got my, as I recall, in Georgia, baseball was still going on. Now, we had a pretty good baseball team, but baseball, so they played late. But baseball was still going on, so we didn't have the baseball players, even though we did it like May. We did it like after, it was like after prom or around the same time. So it was late. We would have guys who were trying out football, who was like a 2-week, the coaches could run that recruiting gig, right? Just try it out for 2 weeks. Doesn't work out, you can quit. You don't have to quit. It's not like if you started in the season, you'd be a quitter. If you do it for 2 weeks, you don't like it, that's okay. But it was also the time for the freshmen because we had a separate freshman team. The JV practiced with varsity, but we had a separate freshman team. That was the time for the freshmen to get their first taste of varsity practice. Freshman practice wasn't like varsity practice. So those guys are learning what it's like. New guys are learning what it's like. You're seeing who's going to step up into leadership roles after your seniors are gone, what's going to happen there. So we want to see what the dynamic of practice is going to be like, what the dynamic of the team is going to be like. That's, to me, and as a coach, I want to see all of my coaches doing things, staying up with practice. I want to see how, if we've got new guys, how they're going to operate. So that to me is goal number one, is let's get the machine working right now and let's get these problems ironed out, because there's going to be problems. Number two, I think as a coach, it's a time for experimentation. I think even if you're new, you can still do a little experimentation. If it's your first year, the experimentation is the stuff that you want to do in the fall. So the way that, if let's say that you go to JDFB and you get you want to run the 4-2-5 defense system. Well, spring is the perfect time to do the full install, right? Go ahead and do the full install. Go ahead and install, not everything, but the things that you would install in 5 days. Maybe it takes 10 in this case, but go ahead and go through the full install of your offense and of your defense, or at least the base package, the core install. Run your drills, figure out what you like and what you don't. Get the pace of practice, how those drills going to work if you've got new drills. If you've been running the system for a while, or even a year or two, now is the time to experiment with some different drills. And I do this, by the way, with our guys anytime. I like with our guys without pads on, because I don't run many drills that require pads. Experimentation with drills, experimentation with 7-on-7 is a great time for experimenting with, even without pads. 7-on-7 is where we experiment with some different route concepts, experiment with more passing game, because obviously we're heavier run game. You can do some experimentation around that. And so getting the machine running, doing a little experimentation, I think are the big goals for spring. And then you'll start to get an idea of what this team is going to look like. In your off-season work, you're getting that idea, what this team's going to look like, who's stepping up. It is interesting to know that the same kids who step up in the weight room or in 7-on-7 may not be the same kids who step up when the pads get on. So you may find a little difference there. We won't find that out until August. If you have the opportunity to do it, you may start to get an idea of that earlier. Who's going to step up, and I don't mean in terms of who's going to be a hitter and all that sort of stuff, but there are kids who excel in the weight room or excel in conditioning or whatever that won't excel at football.
I
At
kind of
least
on your
not right
last
away.
point there. I think that there are kids that naturally become leaders because they are hitters, because they are the big dog when the pads come on,
Sure.
people start
Yep.
popping, and they gain a following. Working with Kenny all this time now, and that's something he talks about is like, you don't get to pick your alphas, and you may want it to be the kid that was the leader in the weight room, or the leader in
Yep.
7-on-7, or the leader in the classroom. That's who you want. But whatever the kid that has the dog in him, the iguana in him. Forgive me, and
Sure. Iguana.
and he shows up and puts the pads on and starts working people. That's people are just gonna follow him anyway. So hopefully it's the same kid, but maybe not. But you got to learn how to have kind of run with both of them, right?
It's very hard to put a kid in a leadership position who we call it street cred. We put a kid who doesn't have street cred. If he's been a 4-year backup, a 3-year backup, but he's at every weight session and he's just not good at football, he's not your leader.
Yeah.
He's just not going to be. He may develop into an important piece of your team, but he's not a leader unless he develops. People don't follow somebody. This goes back to the coaching thing, right? They don't care how much you care until they know how much you know.
Yep.
It don't matter what a great dude you are. In football, you better be able to play football, or you don't get to be the captain or the squad leader or have any sort of influence on the field, even if everybody likes you.
Yep.
You can now. We talked about influence. Leadership is influence, and you can influence people one way or the wrong way too. Kid can suck at football and lead people off the field, right, down the wrong path. But hopefully, we can identify that one too. But yeah, you don't get to be a leader on the field on a football team without. I remember one year we had a kid, great kid, never played football before. Small, but he was very quick. And all the kids always wanted him to come out for football because when they played two-hand touch in the neighborhood, he's lighting it up. And all during he decided to come out. It was junior year, maybe a senior year. Did good work in the weight room. Good grades, good kid. 7-on-7, man, he's all over the place, right? He's like slot receiver, catching it, making moves, all over the place. Those pads came on, and he slid down the depth chart in a hurry. And I can tell you that the excitement and the willingness to, let him have any ownership, it went down in a hurry, because when the pads came on, it was a whole different story.
My goals for spring are not too far off from what you just said. I haven't, because I have a job now and I have to stay at that job until I think I'm literally taking either full or half days off and not getting paid so I can go to spring football. But that's just kind of how it is when you get a job at a new school, right? So, one, I'll be evaluating players there, just what kids fit in what positions. But I'm going to be doing that on the fly, and we're going to be an all-new staff. I think one person stayed from the last staff because they hired a new head coach this year who hired me. I think one person from the previous staff is going to be there, and from what I understand, he's looking for other jobs. So it may be all new. So it's going to be a time for us. You talked about the staff gelling. That's huge, but it's also going to be where we meet the kids, understand the kids, figure out who is in those certain positions, and they get to fill us out and feel like, what are we going to be doing? I know that I talked about my spring is all basically written out now. It doesn't look like an in-season practice right now because I'm doing a lot less with fundamentals on the offensive side of the ball because I need to get the scheme in, and I could be doing this wrong, and maybe next year I change it, and that's part of my experimentation. We're going to go right into 7-on-7 where there's no O-line at all. Their fundamental is going to be running routes and catching balls, and they're going to get a ton of time to do that. O-line's going to be working in the background, right, on their fundamentals. But we won't be able to be together to do the scheme stuff. So I've got to kind of get it all in. I know they're going to forget it, but
Yeah.
at least I can reference. There's the guys. I've already got kids on the team that are watching film. I put some film up. I put up a playbook, some stuff they can get into. There's already kids calling me, texting me, hey, where do you think I'm going to be? I want to learn. That's awesome. It's a really good feeling. I think those kids will memorize it and remember more. But I need to see what's going to make sense to this quarterback. What can he throw? What can he not? What do I need to go ahead and strip now? So that's kind of where I'm at. Is I'm going to try to get the full playbook in, even though it's a little bit overload, be a little sloppy, and then trim the fat, and then kind of get back to maybe I know when something needs to be added in mid-season next year, or that surprise thing we put in for a district opponent who's supposed to kind of drag us, you know? So that's kind of how I'm going to use mine. I would say my goals are just that. Identify what kids are going to be where, what coaches can coach which position, because we're still figuring out. I mean, as our talks have progressed after me accepting this job or talking about the job, it was like I was going to be DC, and then, some offense, OC, O-line and OC, quarterbacks and OC. We don't have a wide receiver guy, so maybe I'm in about, we don't know. No one knows, right? So we're still trying to hammer all that out. So it'll be just kind of see who can coach which position. So it's going to be a big time of experimentation might be the exact word for it. Seeing what we can get in, seeing what coaches can coach which positions, and then getting these kids kind of sorted out where they can get into a playbook and learn. I'm really excited for 7-on-7 because we get to keep going over these pass plays and these tags and these getting a quarterback reading progressions. Speaking of progressions, I got a Bill Mountjoy, my very first Bill Mountjoy emails this week out of nowhere. So I don't know if you put me on a list or if he heard a podcast, but it came out after I can't remember which one it came out on, what episode just came out, but he's filling up my inbox with how much he hates progressions, and here I am going in my first spring as an OC, and I'm going to install progressions with the high school caveat of if you get past number 3, run.
Oh, yeah.
Get out of there. Or something like that. But yeah, so that's kind of the purpose of my spring, is a lot of feeling out who's going to be where. It's way less about what my practice is going to feel like, what my actual fall install is going to feel like. Making sure we can kind of pair things together and see what the kids can do.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good word for it is a dry run. Now, obviously, you're going to be focused on some different things with going to 7-on-7, but I think it's great to use from the defensive side, especially as a dry run, as a let's try to get this stuff in, and then what doesn't work, which we'll get into in a minute. Why didn't it work? How do we adjust it?
I'd say, one thing on defense that makes it hard the last few years, obviously, well, weirdly enough, I've never done a spring install. 4 years as a DC, or helping on defense in some way. But one saying always comes back to me, and that is, you're not going to win the state championship in spring football, but with the right injury, you can damn sure lose it. So that's always on the back of my mind when I was on the defense side of the ball, is yes, I want to practice fundamental tackling, but is it worth the cost of a concussion or a broken arm? Talk about Oklahoma drill. Is it worth the risk of any of that to get in there and just try to just light up my own dudes? So there is that. That's why I'm a big fan of the hawk tackling, because we can wrap and shoot and fire and pick someone up, I went to Tulsa spring stuff and they just run by and smack the hips with 2 hands. You're affirming that, yes, I can be there. I can get 2 hands on the guy. I can make this tackle, but I'm not going to hit my dude and risk injuring whichever side, offense or defense. So I know that on defense, that's kind of one of those things you have to think about. We need those reps at tackling. We need that fundamentals, but we don't need those injuries. So, that's always a big toss-up as well.
We, just on that note, and I've been to a number of Division I, just college practices in general that do that. And I've tried it. I'm sure there's some high schools that have had success with it. But I think one of the reasons that it works really well at that level is all those kids have tackled.
Right.
extensively.
A lot.
And our kids really need the work.
Yeah.
They need to be in, maybe not every day, but I've just found that. And the other thing is our kids, and this is maybe laziness as a coach. Our kids have trouble understanding this is a thud period. This is a whiz period. We call it whiz and hips, so tagging hips. This is a whiz period. This is a thud period. This is a live period. This is a, to me personally, I cut all of that out and put it on the coaches. This is a live period. This is a quick whistle period. And for everybody, for you guys, it's all live, and we'll dictate when the play is over.
Right.
If that running back gets hit in the hole and 3 other guys are about to hit him, I'm blowing the whistle. Play is over.
Yeah.
So that's just something for coaches to think about. If you can dictate, not completely control it, but you don't let a scrum build up. Right, you blow the whistle, it's over. That kind of stuff. Those are where bad things happen a lot.
Second question here. How do you schedule a spring practice to reach those goals? And I'll just keep talking here. Just, like I said, my goal is just get all this installed. So my schedule looks like essentially 1 to 2 run plays and a pass play each day for the first week. I want to get the base stuff in. The formations, I think I have 12 formations or something. We're doing all those in the first 3 days. I did it in 2x2, 3x1, and then heavy or double tight type stuff. So that's kind of how I'm splitting mine up there. So the kids have a chance to understand where we're trying to get. Because if I'm only in 2x2 formations, my pass concepts have to come out of those. So they get the rules and understanding if I need to cross the field versus a 3x1 day where that third receiver is now already on that side of the field, right? If he's got a drag or something, he's got to alternate a route. The run install, just like, Joe, I'm kind of following your plan there. We're going zone day 1. I don't really intend to run a lot of zone this year. There'll be a little bit. I'm going to do some inside zone, probably little to no outside. I think we're going to block our jets up like outside zone, our jet sweep. I've seen it ran more as a power at Owasso last year. They run their jet sweep with a power, kind of a base power block. But I just didn't like that as much. So I'm going to run mine with an outside zone look. Inside zone, we're going to carry as a play. And then we'll just be able to move our H-back around and do fun stuff with him. I actually text Joe the other day talking about split zone and like all these different things I want to do with H-back. So we're going to get that lined out day 1, and then we'll get into our gap scheme stuff. I'm not installing power until like the second week because I want to be able to run counter, a G sweep or buck, whichever way you want to call that, GT and GH counter. I want to be able to run all of that off the same blocking rules. So I want to teach my front side gap down backer, and then all the weird blocking stuff happens in the back end. And so power is the only one where my H-back is not a wrapper, right? And my guard is not the kicker. So I'm just going to cut that, and I'll put it in second week. So I'm just trying to put it in containers or buckets or whatever you guys have used over the years to kind of put your plays in groups. That was my thinking there. And it allows me to I can put in GT and GH on the same day because 10 dudes are doing the same thing and one guy is changing his job, right? Well, I guess 2 because a tackle's going to, he's going to seal the backside or he's going to pull and wrap. And the H is doing the opposite. So I just kind of think about that. And then, we're installing 3 or 4 pass concepts in the spring. I don't want to do anything too crazy. And it's probably all we're going to carry in the season, to be honest. And we're just going to tag the crap out of it. So second week is where I'm going to get all my tags in. So that's formation tags, route tags, running game tags. We're going to take our base stuff and get really good at it for a week. And then the second week, I'm just going to show them how we get to move around, fly around, and do dumb stuff that makes my 10 plays in a playbook look like 50 plays because the defense has got to do all of this stuff, right? 12 formations, but I can make it 55 formations with 3 tags or whatever. So, yeah, so that's kind of how I'm scheduling it to get my goals, which is get a lot of stuff installed, trim the fat later. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to cram the days full. I think we're at 90-minute practices in the spring. So, that time was a huge constraint for me. I know a lot of guys do 2 hours. Luckily, my head coach has been 30-some-odd years of football coaching, and he understands that after 2 hours, you're not going to get a lot of stuff done. So you might as well just get it in real fast. So we'll be... Another constraint on coaches where we'll have to be better, right? We got to be better coaches because our drills got to be shorter and more precise, less fluff, you better find a thing you need to work on and work on it. So, pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, there's nothing gets your practices more focused than and anything. I actually just wrote an email about this. Is the way to get rid of sloppy stuff is to put a container on it and say like, hey, we got 9 minutes. If you go out there, dick around. When we go out there and say we got 3 hours, we can dick around. We know the last 30 minutes is going to be trash.
Yeah.
That's but one of the things I'll mention is that we don't have without pads on. I'm not doing any play install right now, and we just don't have enough guys at a school like this. Our guys are in baseball, they're in track, they're in everything else. In going through an install right now for us, and again, we don't have a true spring practice period. Going through an install right now it could be good for the coaches. Obviously, we're doing install of some 7-on-7 stuff, but that not a lot. I am doing my lineman progression, and my we had talked about it, but my head coach, I don't know. One day he was like, something about outside zone or something, and I was like, okay. And I went down there, and then the next day I said I'm not doing that anymore. I didn't mean like I'm not doing what you say. I said next week I'm starting the lineman progression that we had talked about. Okay. Which is all. Says both our idea. We both had the idea at the same time. Like, let's just lineman school essentially.
Yeah.
And lineman school is we haven't gotten past the first step yet, right? We're stance, we're cadence, we're getting used to sitting in a stance. And I've got a lot of young guys, so I might have 12 linemen at a session right now. We might have 30 to 40 guys total. I might have 12 to 15 guys. Anybody who thinks they're an H or a Y right now gets to be an H or a Y right now, just for 7-on-7 depth numbers. And we kind of let a lot of, especially young kids, we let them, pick their position for now. And our H's and Y's are doing some of the lineman stuff too, just because some of them are definitely not H's and Y's. But we're stance and first step right now. And my head coach said, "What? You still working on outside zone?" And I said, "We're not working on any play. Technically, it's a zone step, and we did add in a outside zone step now, a reach step. We got that far. Still only one, but we did take a different step. And I mean, with the young guys, like even the older guys, just having the amount of time to focus in, especially after last year not being there full time, not being like a run game consultant, getting to coach these guys on the little details of stance, first step, hand position, all of those things. That's what I'm doing right now. And that's what my schedule looks like, is essentially speed, lineman camp. Everybody else is working 7-on-7. And then they go to the weight room. And that's basically our off-season schedule right now. And we go 3 days a week. And I go 2 days a week. We always we divide up our off-season so every coach isn't there every day. The coaches that I work with on their practice installs, again, I am going to recommend to them to take the 5-day install plan, maybe stretch it out with an extra, because I don't want to install more than that. So unless you have a spring game or something where you need all this stuff, for example, our 5-day install on defense doesn't include goal line defense. Well, don't go install goal line defense, because that's not, again, it's a good place to get hurt, right? Don't worry about installing goal line defense. So maybe add in we always, because the normal schedule is day 3 days in helmets, 2 days in shoulder pads before we get to full pads. The sixth day, which is the following Monday, usually is full pads. I always make that Thursday, if we start on Monday, helmets 3 days. Every time you add a piece of equipment, everything takes a step back, right? Everybody
got to go through your stuff again, right?
Yeah, you got it. So I always make that Thursday a very light install. What I would tell, and then so there's not much going in on that Thursday. Usually something that's kind of recycling pieces of different stuff. So what I will tell the coaches that have full spring practice is just add in an extra couple review days, and that'll stretch it out to about 8 days of install, and then 8 days, and you've got a couple days to flex with, and we run some more team, however you want to handle it. So it's going to look like the same thing you're going to do in August or July or whenever you do it. It's going to look like the exact same thing that you're going to do because, again, the dry run. So I want to go through the same install progression. You may take some things out. You may not need to go, especially like you said, you're going into 7-on-7. Well, let's say you're a cover 3, cover 1 team, and you're not going to run cover 3 and 7-on-7. You're going to focus cover 1. Your schedule has a bunch of wing tees. You're going to be in cover 3 a lot. You're going to work mostly on cover 3 in August. Work cover 1 now for the 2 weeks that you need it on the schedule, and spend your effort there. And then in August you're going to be a heavy cover 3 team. So in the spring, be a heavy cover 1 team, just so that it rolls into 7-on-7 for you.
Yeah.
So there's little adjustments like that you can make. But all in all, I want the schedule for those spring practices to look just like. So with our systems, you have the install practice schedules. You have the install schedule plan. The drills. Do that stuff. That's how I would lay it out.
That's a really good point. The drills is going to be big time. It's a great place to test out. Like if you've made a drill notebook or something for a new coach this off season. Hopefully you guys did something like that. A drill book, whatever you want to call it, but it's a great place to test that out as well. Showing them how quickly they need to get these things set up, or maybe you've got a student assistant or a manager or something. It's a great place to introduce them to that stuff as well.
It's a good chance to film them doing those drills too, so that we can talk about, this isn't how it, we can make it better here, make it better here. You don't have to be completely controlling of your coordinators, but of your assistant coaches, but they need to be on the right page.
So I'm glad you talked about filming it, because it's kind of can feed into this last part. Last question tonight is, how do you analyze your spring practice to kind of ensure that you've achieved those goals?
I remember we had a spring game when I was growing up in Georgia. We played a spring game. We actually played Sprayberry, who was not on our schedule anymore, but was 5 minutes away. There were so many schools in our area. So we played a spring game against Sprayberry. And it's controlled scrimmage, not a game. And I remember we got effort grades, or we got graded, and all of us rising seniors, thinking we're hot stuff because all the guys have been beating us up. And this is a school of 2,200 students, so very often you had to wait your turn.
Yeah.
Very few played before their junior year. Very few played varsity before your junior year. I played JV as a junior because there was nowhere to go. We got our grades, and I remember grading out like a 27. And it was like, I suck. And everybody else graded out. Now, I don't know if they just gave everybody bad grades because we didn't feel like we played bad, and I think we technically won the scrimmage, but either either we all needed to wake up, or find out what this level of football is like, or the coaches got to wake up that they've got to raise the level. So I don't know which one it is, but not knowing, not being in that coach's office, I don't know. Somebody got to wake up that this needs to change. So you can grade, you can look at the effort, the level of effort, and say, hey, we need to put more emphasis on effort. I do think that with the Coach Simple Play Fast Win scheme philosophy, if you look and see effort as an issue, you need to look at both how you're motivating your kids and what their motivation is, but also in what you're asking them to do, because often poor effort is a disguise for confusion. So you need to look back and see what was going on with that. So I want to look at the effort of our team. I want to look at how our practices went and how did we stay on schedule? Is the machine running? Is it ready? What do we need to fix? I want to look at the install. Was it too much? Was it not enough? What could we handle? I want to look at those experiments, all of those experiments, and say, was this an experiment we need to keep, or is this an experiment we need to throw out? Remember that. So here's one of the things. This is the only time where you can run a 2-week experiment of something. Because when you experiment in season, you don't want to do it in August. In August, you want to get the base, the core in, right? We don't want August to be like week 1. You should have the base, the core ready to go. That shouldn't be an experiment time. There are experiments that are going to go into your game plan. You're going to see an opening. You're going to see an opportunity. All of those experiments last a max of 3 days, right? If it ain't working on Wednesday, it goes in the garbage. If it ain't working the end of practice on Wednesday, it goes in the garbage. Because we're not going out there on Thursday and trying to fix stuff. So this is the only time where you can run an experiment for 2 weeks if you have practice. If you don't, you can obviously, you're going to run the experiment a little longer, try to nail it down, and then see what it looks like with pads on, and then start to pull your levers, make your adjustments. But you want to go back and look at every little piece of it, and you probably even want to treat it like the season. Right? What do we always talk about in season? Don't sit down the Saturday after you lose your 3rd round playoff game and evaluate the season. It's too fresh. It hurts too much. It's, all those things. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. You got to give it some time. So maybe you give spring a few weeks. Maybe, the timing's right. Maybe there's exams and graduation, and you just kind of step back and wait till all that passes, and then sit down and evaluate. If you film practice, if you have a spring practice or a spring scrimmage, whatever you have, sit back and evaluate it. I think that's one of the worst parts about our system. I don't mind not having pads. I don't mind not having contact days. None of that bothers me at all. There is no delineation between day 1, January 2nd, coming back from winter break. And I mean, there's a little bit, but there's not a point where there's not a natural point where you stop and look back and evaluate.
Right.
Where if you have those 10 days of contact, it's a natural afterwards. Let's sit back and evaluate. So I think for us, we probably need to create some sort of artificial evaluation date.
Deadline.
Let's see where this is going. The natural would be final exams, graduation, switching from school to summer would be the natural point. We also have a dead period in July. That could be a natural point. There's a natural point with basketball season ending and basketball, switching into spring sports, going from winter to spring sports. But that's too short, and you haven't done enough in that time, I think. I mean, you could sit and evaluate it, but it's for something different. We haven't even gotten outside. It's still.
Yeah, and if you are on the JDFB weight room program or something at least similar, I mean, you're not even halfway through, right? Like
4 weeks, and some years we get snow, and we've only done it 3 times.
Yeah. So
this year there's no snow, but
that's too early.
Yeah.
So what we're going to use to analyze this spring, we do have a spring game. It's inter squad, so there won't be another team
Right.
there. But I'll get immediate feedback on calling things from the sideline, having a spotter up top, using the headsets, communicating about what we're seeing, and so we'll have all eyes on the kids, just like we would in season. What's working, what isn't. I watched a clip today of, man, I hate I think it was the Ravens. They GT countered both ways at the same time, so their guards and tackles smacked into each other, right? So we hope we don't see that, but even if we do, we know NFL teams do that crap too in a game, by the way,
Yep.
not at practice. So we get that immediate feedback, game-like atmosphere, but we know that it's ones on twos, and at a small school, your twos are generally there's a big drop off. So for some of you guys, it would be like your ones on your threes or something. You don't expect a lot of the second defense to stop you a lot. The same as the second offense. You don't expect it to be super successful. But you never know. You might find some playmakers there that really shine with the twos. Weird enough, we just talked about that on the O-line episode the other day about are they winning in their positions, right, or in their groups. Then 4 days after that, we have team camp. So that is full pads, traveling up the highway a little bit. We're going to go, I think there's 5 or 6 teams at a team camp. So now we're back into full pad, full action. We'll probably run 10 or 20 plays at each other in a little, you call it a jamboree, I think, or something like that, right?
Yeah,
And then you get a quarter or 2 drives or something like that. So you get to go out and just kind of, once again, I'm analyzing, is the stuff that we put in during the spring sticking? Is there anything that when we call that tag, we're just not doing it correctly? Are we confused about a formation name? Whatever it is, however you're calling your run plays, all yours is numbers. Mine are all names. And so I think either one can easily be confused, but and I grew up in the old school, like 24 was the second back going the 4 hole. So that was pretty simple. It was hard to confuse 12 and 24, but now I'm working with names instead of numbers, and so I want to see, is there confusion there? Do I need to go back to a simpler system? I really want to see the quarterback's ability to read RPOs. I'm less worried about full field concepts because we're going to get into 7-on-7 and we're going to work the crap out of that. So I want to see when there's actual linebackers who are actually worried about the run, I can analyze that. Is my quarterback going to be able to pull off these second level RPOs? Not to mention his first level reads. He's actually going to have a DN that's crashing a down block or setting, he's going to be surf technique and waiting on him. And he's got to make a real read or give, a give or keep read.
Right.
So those are things that I want to look back and analyze, and that's how we're going to do is with the team camp. And then, 7-on-7, I think, for all of your passing stuff. And defense, guys, all your coverages. That should probably be your next big analyzation is, hey, we're going to go to 3 or 4 or 6 or 10 practices this summer. Hopefully hit a tournament or 2. Put some competition. Put something on the line for the guys. I've run away from, berating them for losing a 7-on-7 tournament because it doesn't really matter. But go out there and have some fun. Be creative. Yet another time to experiment. Can we put a whole bunch of tags in and do some really crazy stuff? Just understand that in the season, those linebackers are going to be headed downhill and not backing up. So some stuff that doesn't work in the summer may work when you get back to the fall. But that's kind of our plan to analyze how the spring went, is just immediate feedback with the spring game, immediate feedback with the team camp, and then rolling into that 7-on-7 period. The O-line really gets, they're the ones that get shorted because they just get a couple chances to show they know what they're doing. But I'm okay with that because I think that has to be the most dialed in also, right? That's the technique, the angles, the steps. I'm going to have a center who I'm going to meet on a Monday at the first practice, and he's going to be zone counting and snapping the ball that same practice. Pass pro, that same practice. So he's probably not going to be super fine-tuned along with the other, big fellas out there with him. So I'm kind of okay with them getting out of that limelight of competition, step back, and we'll just work their work their fundamentals a little in the background while the skill guys are going and flying around the field. Sweet. Well, I think we've done all of our due diligence here for spring practice or spring install or whatever you want to call yours. Checked all the boxes for sure. You want to pay the bills here, and we'll jump out here, Joe.
Yeah, check out the 40 Coach Simple Rules, as I mentioned before. You can go to joedanielfootball.com/rules, and it is 40 tips, tricks, tactics, strategies that you can apply to your football team, and at least one of those is going to win you a football game in there. It is a free download that will be sent directly to your inbox. All you do is enter your email address by going to joedanielfootball.com/rules.
Awesome. I want to once again mention athleticspeedmovement.com. Run over there. It is a 12-week program. It's the perfect time to get into it. Guys, we've talked about experiments for the last, I feel like, 3 weeks now, and it's all done. The experimentation with that program is done. Now it's just time to take the finished product. It's the best thing on the market. Okay, it's not a track program. You're not going to be out there A, B, and C skipping and looking like crazy. Okay, you're going to go out and you're going to do real football speed and movement drills, and you're going to make your football kids faster. And that's every position on the football field. Make them all faster. athleticspeedmovement.com. Also, if you are in the need of graphics, I am selling a little bit more of my time this year as I step away from teaching. So I'd love to do the graphics for your team. I've been working with some coaches, just single coaches, just helping them make themselves more advertisable. Is that a word? I'm using it. And then, if you got a single team, football, baseball, whatever. And then, of course, if your athletic program needs some help altogether, I've got packages for all that. Reach out, chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. What cells are opening and closing here, Joe? Beginning of May.
We'll be opening up JDFB weight room here pretty soon. The natural 12-week point, about 12 weeks out. That's the jumping into it. It is a full off-season, 24-week off-season program, but the 12-week spot, we usually open up early May because that's the natural jumping on spot. So if you need a weight room program, if your weight room program isn't producing, then definitely be checking out JDFB weight room. Just like athletic speed and movement, we went out, found an expert who's got 40,000 hours of training different athletes, of training athletes to be successful. It is the best strength program that I have ever been involved with. It doesn't require much as far as, it's a bench squat clean program, but different variations and stuff. But, that's kind of, you need a squat rack, you need a bench, you need a bar, you need hopefully some bumper plates for your cleans and stuff. And that's about it. So check it out. That'll be opening up here pretty soon.
Awesome. Social media, I am on Twitter /X at Coach Chambo OK. You can also reach out at email at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. And then jump in that Twitter community. I started the Coaches Fitness Connection. It's going to be a great place to connect. I'm just sharing science-y stuff, articles, and our runs and lifts and rucks and all the do hard things. That's our motto for 2024 is just do hard things. Joe, where can we find you at, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at FootballInfo. You can find me on Instagram at JoeDanielFootball. And you can email Joe at joedanielfootball.com.
Perfect. Podcast is at the FBCP on Twitter /X. If this is your first time listening to the Football Coaching Podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher, primarily Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening on one of those, we ask that you leave us a review, especially if it's 4 or 5 star. If it's lower than that, holler at us. Let us know why. What are we doing wrong? And how can we, buy those extra stars from you for anything but money? Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. Remember, coach simple, play fast, win.